Well, for a YouTuber like me, the Marvel seems to be the gift that keeps on giving, as we've now got even more bad news about the biggest MCU flop of all time, which is that it suffered an 87% drop in its second weekend at the box office.
It's Hollywood, baby.
And if you think that sounds bad, just wait until you see what the number actually is, as in its second weekend, the Marvels officially brought in $10 million domestically. Bringing the total global box office to $160 million. This is now after 2 weeks in cinemas, and for comparison, Eternals, which wasn't even an extremely successful MCU movie, made $161 million in its opening weekend, meaning the Eternals did in 3 days what the Marvels has failed to do in 2 weeks. And that was the Eternals, which was full of unknown MCU heroes which were just being introduced to the audience, and this is Captain Marvel 2 pretty much, and she's been around for 5 years, and is arguably the most powerful hero in the entire MCU, which I think makes her character the most boring, but that's another problem for another video, as the real problem here is that it really shows how far the MCU has fallen as its most powerful hero, and a hero that has been known to audiences for 5 years, can't even bring in over $100 million domestically in 2 weeks at the box office, as this movie is now only sitting at $57 million total domestically, which is absolutely atrocious. And to make matters worse for the MCU and Disney is that the budget for the Marvels was $270 million, and on top of that original budget, you also have marketing costs, then there's theater costs as well, meaning this movie would at least need to make between $500 and $550 million just to break even, and that's being generous, as most likely this number is probably up around $600 to $700 million. But the Marvels is only projected to bring in around $200 to $250 million globally at the box office, meaning that this movie is set to lose Disney Marvel over $300 million.
You guys are so screwed now!
And we are now seeing reports saying that this flop will lead to lower budgets and lower expectations for the MCU. And honestly, thank God. Because this, while it may not seem like it, is an absolute blessing in disguise for Marvel and for Disney as a whole. Because budgets were getting out of control in recent years, and due to such high expectations, it certainly seemed like they put less effort into their recent films than what they did in the early days and the peak days of the MCU, because they got so complacent and so comfortable, they thought they could bring in $1 billion for basically every project. But slowly, due to the quality of the stories dropping, fans started to peel away, and we now end up with absolute terrible flops like this, which sadly isn't the only flop for Disney this year, as they flopped on multiple projects which seem to be surefire box office successes, but due to the stories just not being great, they all fell short. And what's crazy here is that when you're thinking about superhero movies and you're thinking about the MCU in particular, you'd think that the higher budgets would result in higher quality productions. But compare Dune, which had a budget of $165 million, to this scene from a $280 million budget movie, Black Widow.
Don't do it! This was fun! No!
No, 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 no.
I mean, it is honestly laughable how bad some of these $300 million movies can actually look. And another great comparison is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, which looks like a big budget production. That's an epic movie in scale and also has extremely large stakes, but it had roughly the same budget as the Marvels, which lacked all intensity and all stakes, and was honestly just such a small and boring film. And even when they tried to do something big in the film and try to do some big battle scene, it just looks like a bunch of random stuff blowing up, which doesn't tell a story at all and doesn't really give across any sort of emotion to increase the stakes of the story. It just looks like they're blowing things up in the background because they can, but none of it honestly matters. And I really do think that Marvel got so comfortable and so complacent that they stopped trying to stretch their budgets and make the most out of the money they had and the overall production they had, and they just threw seemingly unlimited money at all their problems without actually thinking them through and without actually trying to use the initial budget that they had planned. And that's honestly great that they could afford to make life easy on set, but it seemed to have made the MCU so comfortable and lazy that the laziness bled into the movies and into the stories, and they came across as lazy themselves. Because if there's one word you can use to describe recent MCU movies, it's exactly that: lazy. As all the movies coming out of the MCU as of late, from Ant-Man Quantumania to the Marvels, even to their series like Falcon and Winter Soldier and She-Hulk, they all just seemed lazy in their CGI, in their performances, in the dialogue, and in basically every single facet of the filmmaking process. It all just came across as lazy, and especially came across as rushed. And this is even being called out by Ridley Scott, who said that these are superhero movies, why aren't the stories good? And he's exactly right here, because what makes superhero films good and comics good is the story. These characters represent so much to people because their stories are deep and human, and they have the power to inspire and bring people together, which is exactly what the peak MCU did. As when you look at great characters like Black Widow, like Captain America, like Iron Man, you were inspired and people all came together and were united under the banner of the MCU in loving these characters and wanting to see these characters grow in the future. However, when you go and watch a movie like The Marvels, it's easy to say that that movie isn't going to inspire a damn thing, which is sad because when you really think about it, all three characters in The Marvels have immense potential, because when you dive into the actual characters in the comic books and you dive into what makes those characters unique, there's definitely great stories that can be told there, and if they were developed well, they could actually come across as great characters that people would want to get behind. However, when it came to what the MCU did with characters like Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau, they just didn't develop them very well and definitely rushed all their projects. Because if you're actually to look at what you could have done with certain characters like Miss Marvel, one great option that I would have been interested in seeing was showing the dynamic between Miss Marvel and Spider-Man in the Young Avengers that they've been teasing over the last year. Because we know that they want to do this Young Avengers with characters like Miss Marvel, with characters like Kate Bishop, and they also wanted to bring Spider-Man into the Young Avengers as well. That would have actually been cool, because when you look at what Miss Marvel is, she's exactly what Spider-Man used to be. She's young, immature, but also fun, and definitely has a lot of potential with her powers, and Spider-Man is now a more seasoned leader and could have become her mentor, and in other words, her Iron Man. And I would have been interested in seeing the character of Miss Marvel develop, because if there was one positive that everyone's taking away from the Marvels, it was Miss Marvel herself, because she's really not that bad of a character. And also, when you look at Monica Rambeau, she definitely has some great characteristics and is portrayed by a talented actress. However, by rushing all these projects and not actually diving into what makes that character unique and actually developing them so the audience feels some sort of connection, she just came across as boring, and you just couldn't care less what actually happens to her character. And so, like I said, there are various characters that have great potential, but unfortunately, after where the MCU is at right now, I'm just not that keen to watch many movies in the future, and the only reason I'm probably going to watch any Marvel movies coming out is just to be able to review them for you guys. But I hope you guys like this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If you like the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all on my next video.